Welcome everybody, it's Selman. In this video we are going to be talking about Richtofen Travels and what he did during them, and this is actually very interesting because these are the travels that everybody has really wondered what he was doing at this time, and we actually have an answer to it now, and it's very interesting what he was doing. It has to do with the blood, summoning keys, souls, and you name it, it's about it. So it's very interesting, and before we can actually get into any of this, you guys have to have an understanding of a couple things. And first thing is that you have to understand the names of the group because these are straight from the Kronorium and that's how they really mention them. So I'm going to also say the same. I won't be reading direct quotes out of the Kronorium unless I have to, because I want to just have this make sense as much as possible. So anyways, back to talking about the groups, because the group's names for Victus is actually the Transit crew, Primus is obviously the Origins crew, and Ultimus is the original crew that we played with in Black Ops 1 and World at War. But also you have to understand we're going to be traveling from 4 different timelines, and just to tell you guys what happened in each of these 4 lines. So we're going to go to the original timeline, which is obviously the Ultimus timeline, is where we did everything from, I believe, World at War to Black Ops 2, well, not including Mob and Origins, because the other timelines we have is Argartha, and Argartha is just the place where the house is and everything. Then we also have the Fractures, which is actually where almost all of Black Ops 3 happened, and then we have Dimension 63, and this one is very interesting, and this one's home to the Origins, Mob of the Dead, and Shadows of Evil universe. They're all in the same timeline, all these 3 different maps, which is very surprising, but it is true. So, and also I'll have on the top right or left of the screen constantly throughout this video showing which universe I'm talking about at that specific point in time, because I'll say, but just to make sure nobody gets lost, I'll have it on the screen telling you which universe we are in and what I'm talking about it, so that'll make it as easy to understand as possible. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's actually get into this video. So surprisingly, Richtofen's solo journey didn't actually begin in his native Dimension 63 timeline, but in the original timeline. And how he got there, you have to actually first look at Primus's travels, because these are travels when they're traveling from universe to universe and all this stuff. And you have to remember, Richtofen, or Origins Richtofen, is a part of Primus, so he was originally with Primus, traveling with them. And what they did, they actually went to the original timeline, and they arrived in the original timeline on June 4th 1943, and they decided to find a way to stop this dimension's Richtofen, obviously Ultimus's Richtofen. But when he's over there, he's actually contacted from the house, the Argartha dimension, by Maxis on June 11th 1943, saying,
"The test subjects can never be allowed to awaken. The havoc that could be wreaked upon the future by such simple-minded individuals could be catastrophic. Heed my warning."
And after this, he starts his own journey on the date of July 19th, 1943, and he is teleported to the house in Argartha. So now we're the Argartha timeline. Well, in Argartha, at the house, Maxis tells Richtofen the plan to locate the Kronorium and the summoning key. Quote unquote, hearing echoes from his other selves, he realizes that he has a connection with Samuel Solinger and decides to use Victus to acquire the Kronorium. Teleporting back to Dimension 63 on April 16th, 1940, Richtofen contacts members of the Illuminati to help build the laboratory beneath Alcatraz. 2 days later, on April 18th, Richtofen meets Stanley Ferguson and convinces him to help him assist the Illuminati with the construction of the Alcatraz laboratory. Richtofen then returns to Argartha, where he begins to communicate with Samuel Solinger. Together they persuade Victus to travel to various locations in order to recover the Kronorium. And of course that's what happens in the comic book series, and it kind of spoils what happens in the comic book series in this, but then Richtofen returns to Dimension 63 on July 4th 1941 and meets Victus under Alcatraz. Arriving from the empty Earth with the Kronorium, upon reading the Kronorium, Richtofen discovers numerous timelines documenting their fate and learns about the blood vials. He would later write on this page, "I know what I must do, ER 4741. And this is actually really interesting because what he actually saw right here was a timeline we got the other day, and this is also why we see these exact words written on this Kronorium paper where it says, "I know what I must do, ER 4741. So that's really cool little Easter egg right there. So it's kind of interesting that we're looking at the same thing Richtofen's looking at. It's pretty darn cool. But anyways, then time traveling backward, but still in Dimension 63, but to January 11th 1934, he collects the blood of Cell and Finn. And then going even further back in time, of course staying inside Dimension 63, on June 4th 1914, he delivers the blood to to his past self. So he went before Origins and everything and gave himself the blood vials. So this is how he got through this. And if you guys want a proper explanation on the blood vials, I have a video going in depth on talking about all the blood vials and explaining this to the best of my abilities, but I'm just going to be going through this as fast as possible because I have already went through the blood vials in depth. So if you guys want to check that out, there'll be a separate video. Hopefully I'll have a card going to it right now. But anyways, coming back to what we were saying, teleporting to the original timeline on January 10th, 2063, Richtofen instructs the undead Richtofen to pursue Victus and recover their blood vials. Teleporting to Agartha, Richtofen meets the undead Richtofen and gives Richtofen the Victus blood vials. Richtofen teleports back to Dimension 63 on the same day he arrived last time, on July 4th, 1941, which is very interesting, and when he gets there, Victus is obviously still there because it is the same exact day as he arrived the other day and met Victus and got the Chronium from them, and he arrived on that exact same day after doing all this, and then he went and put Victus on ice to be kept safe until they are needed again. And this is actually very interesting because right here, this is the reason why on that notched loading screen we actually see these cryo chambers inside the Mob of the Dead looking area of this, and we always wondered what we really didn't know when there were 4 cryo chambers activated at the same time. We never seen that before, but since there is a bunch of Mob of the Dead related things on the same loading screen, I highly believe that this is actually the case because who else has been put on ice, of course in the cryo chambers, to be kept safe until they are needed again, which is also very interesting because it looks like Victus may be having a return. I'm not too sure inside a future comic book series or in a future game. I would be surprised to see if they do actually have a future game return or not. But anyways, back to what we were talking about. Later that same day, so still on July 4th, 1941, Primus arrives and Richtofen gives him the Victus blood vials. And after Primus leaves, Richtofen learns the location of the summoning key, time travels forward in time to April 21st, 1944 to Morgue City to secure the summoning key. The next day, on April 22nd, he learns a reporter has the summoning key and confronts him. The reporter waves a letter from Monty at Richtofen, ordering him to stay away before attacking him. Richtofen kills the reporter in self-defense, and this is actually from a cipher we got back in The Rise of the Rocket, and it's really cool to see it referenced here again. But then a couple days later, on April 25th, 1944, Shadows of Evil happens. And all of the events happen when the Shadow Man tricks everybody. Then you suck the Shadow Man into the summoning key, and then of course Richtofen shows up out of nowhere and snatches the summoning key from the Keeper. Then stepping back into the rift that we saw inside the Shadows of Evil ending cutscene, Richtofen travels to dimension 2210 to secure an innocent Richtofen soul. He delivers a soul to the house, teleporting back to the original timeline, arriving through a teleporter, and this is what we saw inside the Giants intro cutscene. He kills his ultimate self, and this actually triggers the fractures across space-time and creates a fractures timeline. And Richtofen and the rest of Primus are also teleported to the fractures timeline, and this is also why we saw inside the Giants intro cutscene the clock all of a sudden just stopped and it starts snowing, because this was to signify that they are no longer in the original timeline but they entered the fractures timeline. So Ultimus Richtofen never actually died, because before that could happen they were teleported into the fractures timeline. Then of course the story of Primus continues and you go through the story of Black Ops 3. And of course that brings an end to Richtofen's solo journey, and that's about it for this video. But if you guys do want to see an explanation for Victus's travels, for Primus's travels, Ultimus travels, any of those persons' travels, or what they did and how they time traveled and how they jumped from universe to universe, if you guys want to see any of that, go ahead and tell me down in the comments, because I'm planning to make them anyways, but it'd be great to see some support for them. But anyways, that's about it for this video. If you guys did enjoy the video, go ahead and thumbs up. If you guys want to stay tuned for content similar to this, go ahead and subscribe. But I'm going to go, and I will catch you guys on my next video.